Hey, welcome back to Couch Talks at ATT&CKcon 4.0. So we have Marina with us, who did an amazing talk on macOS, which is personally my little Apple heart.
Thank
And
you.
so love the talk. Love
Thank
the
you so
fact
much.
you went through a group that I'm very interested in personally, but also like actually going through a point of time. Like you actually went over a span
Right.
of time.
Right.
That's so powerful because in reporting, so often we only like see this snapshot. And you were
Mhm.
talking about that in your talk about how like they have iterated on things and like if it's not
Right.
broke, don't fix it.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
so
If it
valid.
worked the first time, you have a 100% success rate. Might as well just keep doing it. And, iterate slightly to make it better, improve it. But yeah, it's very resource efficient.
It is, especially when your goal is making money.
Right.
And you're like, why would I spend money just to make that money back?
Exactly. The ROI is great for them.
Yes, yes, it is. I love it. So real quick, you had a question in Slack that
Okay.
we wanted to address, and it was basically that the mapping to Lazarus group, right, that we
Mhm.
went over was different from the current adversary mapping and attack. I know
Right.
there's some definite conversation about this, so but I'll let you speak first, and I can kind of give some Mac or
Right. So some context, I think like different EDR vendors, different researchers will map like different groups as like overlapping, and some have it more as concentric circles, right? Is it like all the three different telemas, right? They still make up Lazarus. So it's kind of a difference of attribution and also naming like certain subgroups versus like overlapping resources are probably, I mean, in the end, they're probably all just like North Korean resources. They might be like double dipping, right? They might be like friends and sharing secrets. There's a lot of TTPs that overlap as well. And then like the tactics I talked about today aren't currently in the attack version, hopefully in future versions, but that's another reason for discrepancy, like the TCC database dumping and writing, and also the ad hoc signing. So that's all another. In the future, it'll be addressed, but
yeah.
yeah.
No, I'm glad you put that out there. I know for on the attack team, we actually did a deep dive into Lazarus group, and we were like, okay, well, how are we going to restructure this? Especially when people are pointing to attack and being like, well, if it's an attack, then
Right.
X, you know? And
Right.
so we found a lot of the same thing is that there's these subgroups, but the reporting, just like what you said, there's clusters, right?
Right.
Activity groups. And you're like, we're just attack. We're based on open source reporting, guys. Like,
Yeah.
we're not going to give you some like craziness here. Like, we're not an independent CTI producer, right? We're
Right.
just this aggregate that kind of gives you what's you guys are the smart people. We'll present that.
Right.
So
Yeah.
yeah, like there's actually broken out a couple of groups underneath the Lazarus group now to kind of help create those separations.
Right.
But we
Right.
do
Right.
still have the Lazarus group because at the end of the day, there's still companies that are,
Yeah.
and it goes in that bucket right there.
Right. It's like North Korea, that bucket. Yeah.
Yes, it's very messy. They do these things in their off time, but we really don't know when that starts anymore, and so
Yeah.
it's
Agreed.
tricky. So about those techniques,
Yes.
I am for sure the person to blame for all of the techniques not being an attack, hands down.
No worries.
You're
You
talking
have
to
a
the right
lot on
person.
your plate.
I will say email is my weakness. I don't know how people manage emails. They're very hard. I'm much better on Slack. So, but now that we're talking, always reach me out on Slack.
For sure. I'll submit the ad hoc signing as well.
Yes, I love that actually. Actually remember saying that. But one of the things that you actually called out, which I thought was really cool, me and another fellow nerd were geeking out on this right before your talk or during or after your talk. And it was literally curling something, typing it, and then like into bash and then executing whatever you need to execute
Right.
and then cleaning up. And you
Right.
actually you can't it's a signature evasion. Because
Yes. Yep.
essentially you can't signature a process.
Hmm.
And like I know you had mentioned that in your talk.
Yeah. So there's two thoughts behind this. One is like file-based signature evasion, right? There is literally no file. There's no malware. Well, there's malware, but like in that specific event, right, there's no malware to tie it back to. So if you did any like virus total retro hunts, right, there's no actual file to be like, oh, it's the hash that did this. Second, like having worked at a bunch of EDR vendors, tracking is really tough. So when you have bash piping to another process, they're separate process trees. So tying back the events to see the entire timeline, you just have to Frankenstein those individual process trees based off of the host and then based off of the time to see like, I think this is what happened. This was the next process. So it's hard to trace that like process parent-child relationship as well.
Yes, that's actually been a huge effort. I think like Jared Bradley's like new process like Sprite Tree came out, because it's not about the process. Like Windows centric version, right, is parent child.
Right,
But
right.
Mac OS, it's actually responsible PID.
Yeah,
And in
yeah.
that process, it's totally a different way to think about it. And
Right.
it's
Like a
not
lot of
Windows.
EDR is very Windows centric, and like the
Yes.
parent child works for Windows, but on like Unix based system where it's like for one process in Windows there's like 20, right? On Linux or Mac, it's a lot more difficult.
Yeah, it's funny how it's like you don't realize how significant those changes are
Right.
until you see an EDR map that platform with the perspective of a different platform.
Right. And you also don't even see like the pipe like in a command line, right? That's another gaping hole. It's like you have to assume that's what happened, but you don't see it like, oh, based off of that, here's like related trees. You'd have to again hunt based off of that time period and the victim host. So
I love that you said that, because I think what I'm starting to find now, the more and more we have these conversations, you actually, especially on Mac OS, you find it by the evidence of something that you would not expect to be there.
Right.
It's like the absence of, but you don't actually find like, oh, this technique happened because it's in a library. It's actually like this random thing is here. That means this probably happened, even though it's not related.
Yeah, it's very inverted from how you'd hunt on like Windows.
Yeah, it's literally like looking at an inverse picture.
Right.
But how did you get started? Like, because Mac's pretty special field. I mean, I'm just saying, how did you get started in cybersecurity?
Very unconventional. So I went to UC Berkeley, so shout out Go Bears. But I actually was a psych major. And I went to business school, so not remotely technical.
And speak Chinese.
Yes, I learned Mandarin in high school. It was required to take foreign language. So and then my first job was sales. I worked at Carbon Black, and I was a sales engineer. And someone recommended I like join the threat team, and I was like, I don't really know what I'm doing. I'll give it a shot, and like the rest is history. So
that's a courageous path.
Yeah, like a lot of learning on the job.
That's awesome, especially like the amount of intimidation to get over.
Yeah.
Like jumping fields, let alone like we have so many people that are like, well, how are you qualified for this position?
Right.
Tell me why you deserve to be
like
on
if
my
you had
team.
looked at my resume on paper, I was not qualified, but like someone said, I think you're smart, I think you're a fast learner, like why not apply for this role? And I was like, sure, and I got it. And yeah, so.
I love that. Well, thank you, because I'll now be able to use your presentation and attack. So I really appreciate it.
Yeah, and I'm so happy to be here. It's my first time and I'm having a blast. So
I appreciate it. All right. Well, now we're gonna be able to talk to two of our speakers that followed immediately after that, which are going to be Andrew and Michael. Welcome.
Glad to be here.
Welcome to the Couch Talks.
Hello. What a voice to introduce us with. Thank you. It's been a long time since I've made my living on a couch.
I feel like that's a great like psychology like line right there. It's like, so tell me about what's really going on.
It's going great.
I love the title of your talk. It was Tears of Our Kingdom. That was brilliant. What brought on Link? Like, I mean, there's an obvious, but I'm sure there's a story.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that it is obvious that it was too good to pass by, that, a shortcut is a .lnk file. But honestly, I think it comes back to, as I mentioned a little bit in there, that just there are so many attack chains that use LNKs in them, and it really is just the thorn that's forever on our side these days, it seems like.
Yeah, it was the game of the summer, too. I mean, when we were doing CFP, it was that and the terrible abomination that was Diablo. So what are we going to do? It had to be LNK, Tears of Our King.
I will always have a secret space in my heart for Diablo.
Yeah, well, I could have butchered the talk, so.
That's fair. How did you discover the technique?
So we talked a little bit about it in our presentation, but realistically, we saw a suspected espionage campaign come into a Proofpoint customer environment. And at first, it was just a kind of strange chaining of PowerShell commands resulting from clicking on an email email URL. And drilling down on that, we and our colleague, Greg Lesnowich, kind of took a deeper look at the LNK field and said, I've never seen this before. And we kind of shopped it around and said, I'd never seen it before. And then we had asked Andrew to see if he could replicate it with POC, and he did. And we're like, we should submit this to attack.
Yeah, first of all, shout out Greg. Wish you were here.
Miss you.
Yeah, I mean, it was fun. It was a lot of fun. And honestly, I took pride in making my POC a little bit better than actual attack.
Yeah, we put in a lot of cycles on our own POC, not analyzing the like attacker's not so hot POC. So yeah, it turned out pretty good at the end of the day.
I mean, it's good to take pride in your work, right?
Oh man, there's a lot to be said on that because like the attackers don't have to have a great POC, and then like the security researcher will take it and like make it like a fancy shiny product in the end.
We definitely saw the like light at the end where we're like, well, if we're on stage, we're not going to put up bad POC code. Like we should put some time into it. Just see what you can do, man.
Oh, that is amazing. All right, now during your talk, something that you mentioned was the byte limit, right? On that icon, the LNK icon. Let me get that right. I'll let you guys actually get that. Can you like inside of that byte limit, what could you do with that as a malicious attacker? I mean, you talked about your POC, but what else?
Yeah, I mean, so to quote Step Brothers, there's so much room for activities. And 780 bytes, like there's a lot you can do in there. And I showed a couple examples graphically of what we thought could go in there. And I did some testing to see if I could stuff an entire full Cobalt Strike beacon in there. It's slightly too large. Maybe somebody more talented than I could do that, but you definitely can get the Cobalt Strike stager in there, and of course a Metasploit payload in there.
Yeah, I mean, URLs are an obvious one for just staging whatever you want. And like Andrew said, certain shellcode stagers, like anything shellcode can be so small to just stage a next payload. So it's incredibly versatile. Like the LNK icon field, imagine how many characters you would expect an icon file path to be. And then if you can make your exploit code that long, or realistically representations of code that long, because the Windows operating system can have substitution characters to execute things that can represent larger bodies of strings or code. So kind of sky's the limit as long as it's 780 bytes or below.
That's so wonderful.
Yeah, maybe that'll be a challenge for anybody who is here who like this to see, can you stuff an entire Cobalt Strike beacon inside of there?
Yeah, it's like the Nathan's hot dog contest. That's great. That's what we're bringing to cybersecurity.
I would say so I found out that you used to be an investigator for art fraud?
I was I'm not gonna say very brief. I was an art recovery specialist for a time. And the way that you become an art recovery specialist is you go to liberal arts college and then you start to sell art and then you fail at that. And then you go and you get another job. And you do pretty okay at that. But yeah, I was working for a consultancy in New York and ended up recovering over $11 million of stolen art by a very famous US-based artist, Jasper Johns. And I was lucky enough that that same company also had a digital forensic shop, and they let me hang out in there after hours when I wasn't hunting down art to kind of learn how to look at disk image and just kind of get my feet wet in the cyberspace.
You know, that's a coincidence because I used to be an art thief.
Oh my God.
Just kidding.
I'll talk to you after.
Okay.
I love that. That is fascinating. I feel like you should do a talk on that at a conference.
I've heard in the past that you've also presented on similar content. So if you have a POC you want to go in on, I'm all in.
Oh, deal. We'll talk. I'm actually 100% serious. We can talk later about that. But thank you guys so much for your talk. You can obviously tell that was really well researched, and you have a great research team. And the POC code was fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Always. So next we're gonna have up. I love the costumes, and I meant to grill the previous speakers about not having costumes. But can I just say, full send. I so appreciate you guys.
Thank you.
This is wonderful.
Yeah, if we were gonna do it, we're gonna go ham. We're gonna go all in.
Yeah, we realized we were the only one dressed up, and I'm like, all right, we'll just embrace the weird. We'll just go with it. We're going for it.
Thank you for that. Yeah. Actually, thank you. I mean, shame on all the other speakers, right? Like, shame. Just where's my bell? Bad reference. Really bad reference.
Yeah. But what's life without a little pageantry?
Yeah. Then my kids will love it when they watch it.
So, I hear you are a author.
I am.
Of books.
Yes, children's books.
That is amazing. Sorry, I'm like, I feel like that's just so cool. How did you get into that?
So my kids brought home a book one day, and it was called The Legend of Rock, Paper, Scissors. And it was like this epic tale of like a little rock character and a little scissors, and it was like how they became to hate each other, and then they had this epic battle. I was like, man, that would be so cool if it was like cybersecurity or like threat actors. And And then I just hyper focused on that and wrote it and thought it would be funny for my kids. But then I was like, I want to publish this, and it's been awesome ever since. I actually just published my 3rd book in the series.
That's really a huge accomplishment.
Thank you.
Congratulations. So I feel like, what about you, James?
What about me?
What quirky thing do you have?
I don't know. I wouldn't say quirky, but
You play rugby.
yeah, I like to run around a muddy field on a Saturday and smash into other people. So I guess that's quirky. On a regular occasion, I have a black eye. You know, it just happens.
I feel like that's like a Fight Club moment when you come into the office.
It would have gone with the costume.
It would have. So I played
Oh,
at the weekend, and I was like, oh no, I hope I don't get one.
That's hilarious. What led you, like, thank you for your presentation and all the research that went into it. I know that a lot of times behind the scenes, no one actually sees the late nights on slides and trying to put things together and finding that right meme, because you all had some clutch memes with pirates. I love them. There was definitely some comments in Slack talking about those, and a lot of compliments on showing the level of procedures as well. But what brought you all about having this talk?
It all started with the Captain Barbossa quote, because people always say, like, when I talk about attack, everyone thinks about it from a detection point of view. But I'm like, that's not how we use it. We use it for tracking, and I'm more like a taxonomy, and also to educate us about TTPs, because it's this massive knowledge base that explains it exactly how we want to. So that's kind of the core of how the talk became pirate themed. But then we also, like, our first big like threat hunting project, where we were actually finding stuff with our like makeshift keyword query, was the Quackbot, and we were so excited about it. And I was like, oh, this is gonna be perfect. But we didn't know that Quackbot was disrupted when we submitted the talk. We just thought we were just bad hunters.
And it turns out.
And then
yeah.
I was so excited when they got shut down, because I was like, oh, it turns out we're not that bad.
Right. We were also having quite an intense discussion about the difference between privateers and pirates.
Yes.
Yeah. So privateers are legal pirates anointed by the crown. So in the time of Queen Victoria I, you had a bunch of Englishmen pillaging other boats legally, and then you had the bad guys, which were the pirates.
I remember that. And isn't the word pirate actually come from cargo that was lost?
I do not know. Now, because I remember when I told him, like, we should do a pirate theme, he was like, should we dress like privateers? I'm like, what's a privateer?
It's a legal pirate. Yeah.
Yep.
That's brilliant.
Like, yes.
Well, so they made them legal, and then they made them illegal again, and then they made them legal again because they weren't the pirates. The privateers that were now pirates were unhappy, so the crown had to give in. So
can I just say I really appreciate the fact that you actually researched this to this degree and level.
We committed.
Well, weirdly enough, they actually teach it in primary school back in England.
Really?
Yeah. So that's how I knew about it. Yeah.
They actually, I recognize it. They actually, some of America's education actually is decent in moments of apparently pirates and privateers.
I did not get pirate education, and I'm upset.
What is there one thing that you all wish that you could have covered during the talk that you were not able to?
I definitely would have. I know it's the kind of linchpin of our talk about how it can be used as a knowledge base and how it can be very stylized and custom to your needs, but definitely coming from the blue team side, where it's used reactively, is worlds different to where we are now, threat hunting, and really kind of investigating, kind of looking through all of the data sets and IOCs and trying to plot the behavior. Like, that knowledge base is absolutely invaluable. And I wish we could have had more time to kind of really drill that home.
Yeah, no, that's a beautiful level of maturity that honestly I think is the ideal for where everyone wants to end up at, right? Where you can actually see how everything kind of comes together at that level of detail. So, and I loved all of you all's points about, like, it's a point of education. It's a point of knowledge and learning, because that was how I actually learned how to do adversary emulation, was through attack. It's like you started on technique, you got to know it really well on all the platforms.
And
now I have a pretty flag that I'm going to put up in my office. So I'll always know which TTPs are being used.
I love it. Thank you all so much for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for having us.
Yes. So back to our audience. That is the last talk for our little small session. We'll be back again tomorrow. And so yeah, if there's any questions that you have, if you have any lingering questions for any of the speakers, be sure to put in the Slack room. We definitely pay attention to that. And honestly, our speakers are here for you. So take advantage of that. And thank you. We'll see you tomorrow.